Well, it's that time again. Today, I am tasking myself to fix the 2023 New York Jets. Hey, what's going on? I am Matt O'Leary back with another video. Before we get started today, I just wanted to mention you can follow on socials at Matt O'Leary NY. Also, if you haven't already, please make sure to check out the Just Jets podcast. Before we head into talking about any sort of coaching changes, which is where we'll start, I want to talk to you guys about Geology. Geology is a 16-time award-winning skin, hair, and body care company recognized in Men's Health, Hypebeast, Birdie, Esquire, and Ask Men grooming awards. Geology creates simple and effective skincare and hair care routines customized just for you with ingredients that are proven to work. Their products are built around just a handful of powerful, proven ingredients that have been trusted by dermatologists for decades. And right now, for a limited time, they're hooking you up with an absolutely insane offer. Buckle up, folks. Use my code MattO'LearyNY50 or scan the QR code that's on the screen, and they will give you an additional 50% off their award-winning skincare trial set. This discount stacks on top of their current sale prices, and that's not all. Top of that, they're giving you an additional bonus offer on one of their brand new skin, hair, and body products of your choice when you add it to your trial. This is one of the best offers that you will see. Make sure to get it before it's gone. Okay, so after the drama, the Jets decided to move on from Mike LaFleur. So that means offensive coordinator is the first thing that the Jets have to fix. There are a bunch of different candidates that they are currently looking at, but if you really want to go about trying to fix the New York Jets, Woody Johnson needs to throw the bag at Frank Reich, who would be my choice to be the offensive coordinator. Frank Reich very well could get a head coaching job, but there are only currently 5 openings, and the likelihood of him getting a head coaching job is probably a little bit on the slimmer side. So he needs to get Cohurst to come here, which money talks, baby. Get this guy to come here. He was the Indianapolis head coach from 2018 through 2022. Had success with a bunch of different quarterbacks, whether it was Carson Wentz back with the Eagles, where he was the OC in 2016 and 17. That's when Carson played his best football. That jump from 16 to 17 before the injury and things went off the rails. He's a very good quarterback that year. He was on his way to winning an MVP. He had a ton of success with Andrew Luck in the 1 year that he coached there in 2018 before he retired, going right on the eve of the 2019 season. His worst offense that he put out there outside of this year, because well, this year was just a disaster from top to bottom. Matt Ryan stunk. But 2019 with Jacoby Brissett, when they built a team and built an offense around Andrew Luck, and then he decides to retire in the preseason. But even Phillip Rivers, whether it was during his time as the offensive coordinator in 2014 or 15, or when he had Phillip Rivers come to the Colts in 2020, they had some success there. They were top 10 in yards, or he had a top 10 offense in yards 4 times, top 10 in points 4 times. West Coast style of offense, a triangle passing attack is very something that he likes to do. The Jets don't necessarily have to bring in a West Coast guy, but it might make the transition a little bit easier because they have guys who fit that on the roster right now, if that makes sense. Okay, so now into the cap space portion. We got to start with some cuts, a retirement, some post-June 1st cuts, some pre-June 1st cuts, all that good stuff. That's where we'll start. As of this second, the Jets have $15.3 million in cap space. So they have to create more because obviously they need help at the quarterback position, and quarterbacks are expensive. So a post-June 1st cut that's going to be a little bit difficult to do, but I think is worthwhile when you consider the amount that it would clear up. CJ Mosley. Yes, he is a leader on this defense and is an important piece to this defense, but you'd save $17 million for moving on. If he's on the roster, his cap hit is insane. Unless you restructure, you could consider restructuring, but I think they need to get a little bit younger and quicker at that position. So I'm going to decide to move on from CJ Mosley, free up $17 million. And then I think Dwayne Brown retires, which that would free up $10 million there. So that would bump you up to $42.3 million before we get into any other kinds of cuts. Some other names that I think is worthwhile to move on from. Carl Lawson. He was someone who I was team restructure for a very, very long time. But I think with Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens, and Bryce Huff, we'll talk about Bryce Huff's contract in a little bit. Freeing up Carl Lawson's $15 million probably makes sense to do. And again, if you're going to try to, add and get a legit quarterback in here, you need all the money you can. Corey Davis, cutting him frees up $10.5 million. So I think that's just, unfortunately, that signing did not work out. He was too injured when he was on the field, too inconsistent. Jordan Whitehead, another signing that didn't work out. Cutting him frees up $7.25 million. He is just another one who's way too inconsistent. There are times where he comes down to the line of scrimmage and makes some nice plays, but he misses way, way, way too many tackles for my liking. I'm moving on from him and freeing up $7.25. Braxton Berrios, a former fan favorite, but kind of just really, really struggled this year. He was an all-pro returner in 2021. This past year in 2022, not very good. It frees up $5 million to move on from him. I think you could give the kick return and punt return jobs to someone else. And last, but certainly not least, Braden Mann. It is time to go, good sir, for cutting him $1.01 million that frees up. He was a 6th-round pick in 2020. Not effective enough over his 3 years here. It's time to move on. $81.06 million after all those cuts is what you are working with. Now it's time to get aggressive and try to figure out the quarterback position. So, do you sign Jimmy G? Do you trade for Lamar? Do you trade for Aaron Rodgers? I think the trade that the Jets are going to end up pulling off is for Derek Carr. I don't think it's going to be super costly in terms of picks. He could technically just end up being released after the Super Bowl, but I think that they're going to accept a trade and try to get something back. Yes, he has a no trade clause, but he could choose to go to the Jets if he wants to, and I think he's going to end up getting moved a couple of days right after the Super Bowl. So what am I going to send to pick up Derek Carr? A 2023 3rd-round pick and a 2024 4th-round pick. I don't think it's going to be anything super costly again because you just look at the contract that you're trading for. It'd be a $32.9 million cap hit for next year, if I'm not mistaken. And then it goes up after that. So you're trading for his current contract. It's not going to be a boatload of picks because, well, the Raiders, they know, everyone, the league knows that the Raiders are trying to move on. They are going to move on, and they'll just have to cut them. So it's kind of like, we'll throw you a day 2 pick and an additional day 3 pick in the following year to get Derek Carr, who, I mean, let's be honest, would be probably the 2nd best quarterback in Jets history behind Joe Namath the second he takes a snap. Is he perfect? No, none of the quarterback options, unfortunately, are perfect. There's risk involved with every single quarterback option that the Jets could go with. Jimmy G, familiar with Robert Saleh, hurt all the time. Lamar Jackson, that's a big swing, a really big swing. And would he probably be the highest ceiling one? Without a doubt. He's missed 5 games each of the last 2 years. And you would have to pay a ton of picks and a ton of money. I like Lamar. I think I would not be upset. I know for a fact I wouldn't be upset if they traded for Lamar Jackson, but likelihood, that's a really big risk. Brady is 152 years old. Aaron Rodgers, you'd have to trade for him, and he's approaching 40 years old. There's no perfect solution here because of, unfortunately, how Zach looks through the first 2 years. It's going to have to be some veteran. I'm comfortable with Derek Carr, and that's the decision that I would make. So after you acquire him, you are now left with $48.16 million. Let's talk extensions now. So for Quinnen Williams, that's the most important guy that I think you have to look to extend this offseason. The good news is he's under contract for next year, so it's not like you necessarily have to impact next year's salary. It's kind of like a tack on after that sort of thing. So I'm going to give him a 5-year, $105 million contract. That's $21 million per year. That's supposedly what he's looking for. Okay, give it to him. That's how good he is. The issue with him through his first 3 years of his career was inconsistencies. He put that behind him. He was a young, blossoming star that gets after the passer. That is extremely, extremely important for both Robert Saleh and just the NFL in general. Like, you need to get after the quarterback. That's the most important thing on a defense, and he is the best player at doing that the New York Jets have. I have a few depth signings or depth extensions. Nate Herbig, 1 year, $3 million. I think you bring him back as interior offensive line depth. He could play center if need be, could play guard. I'm going to bring back Quan Alexander. I really liked him this year. I think he was solid. I'm going to give him a 1 year, $3 million deal. He didn't get hurt. I don't think it's worthwhile to give him a long-term extension. He knows Robert Saleh well. He's thrived with Robert Saleh. I think it makes sense to bring him back. Quincy Williams, I'll also bring back. 2 years, $6 million. So still a $3 million AAV, a nice little bump up in pay there. I think the Jets like him a little bit too much. I think he's fine as depth, but I don't love him as an every down player. But at that price point and keeping Quinnen happy, I think it's worth it to bring him back. And you could add another linebacker in the draft to round out that room with Jamie Sherwood, who I think came on a little bit at the end of the year. Okay, Bryce Huff. He's a restricted free agent, so I'm slapping a second-round tender on him. That's a 1-year, $4.3 million deal. You sign him, give him a more full-time role, and then worry about an extension, a long-term, probably higher-cost extension after that, depending on how he plays, but no need to give him that right now. You slap the second-round tender on him. I don't think anyone's giving a second-round pick for Bryce Huff. Greg Zuerlein is someone that you absolutely have to bring back. He really, really solidified the kicking position, which is something the Jets have not had in 4+ years, a really, really long time. Greg Zuerlein was good. Please bring him back. And last but not least, I'm surprisingly going to say this. I did not think this is where we'd be, but Nathan Shepard was actually kind of good this year. So 1 year, $2.5 million for Nathan Shepard. He provides depth on the interior of the defensive line, which is something that they could use behind Quinnen Williams. So $29.36 million is remaining, and there are some bigger names that I'm letting walk. Mike White, I think if you're trading for Derek Carr, you don't necessarily need to pay big money for a backup. And not that Mike White would make a ton of money, but it's probably going to be like, I don't know, $6 million a year. That could be allocated elsewhere. Connor McGovern. The issue with Connor McGovern is due to the center market in free agency in this year's free agent class. I think he's going to get a raise, and I would be okay with bringing McGovern back at around where his price point is. But if he's getting another $2-3 million a year on the cap, I'm not exactly very fond of that decision. Solomon Thomas, good guy, but I think time to move on. George Fant, see you later. Sheldon Rankins, kind of same thing, just a little too injured. LaMarcus Joyner stinks. And James Robinson, while you traded for him, it didn't work out. Cut your losses. You move on. You could get by with the 3 other running backs that you have on the roster, and Breece Hall, Michael Carter, and Bam Knight. So there you go. Now it's time to get to actual free agency where you can go out and spend external money or spend money on external players. The first guy that I think makes a ton of sense for the New York Jets to target is Allen Lazard. I will sign Allen Lazard to a 3-year, $30 million contract, so a $10 million AAV. He's exactly what the Jets need at the wide receiver position. I know that's not flashy. I know it's not DeAndre Hopkins. I know it's not spending a first-round pick on a wide receiver. But when you have Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, those are 2 finesse receivers. They are very good with the ball in their hands. They make guys miss. Allen Lazard is a big body red zone threat, which is exactly what Corey Davis was supposed to be, but just didn't really work out that way. He had 788 yards and 6 touchdowns this past year. He is an amazing blocker, which might be his best asset, which we know the Jets' identity is to run the football when you have Breece Hall. And that's, again, that's what you're going to want to do when you have a guy of that caliber. So they're going to need to add a wide receiver who can block, and Allen Lazard could do that and adds a different element to this wide receiver core that they currently don't have. I am also going to right the wrong from 2021 and bring back Thomas Morstead to punt for the Jets. He was very good that year, filling in for Braden Mann. He punted for the Miami Dolphins the past year. I'll give him a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. Again, should not have given the job back to Braden Mann. They should have just continued to roll with Morstead. That was a mistake, so right that wrong. And then the last guy, I'm looking to add a safety. I think it's important because I cut both. Well, I cut Whitehead and letting LaMarcus Joyner walk. So they're going to need safety help. I'm going to sign Julian Love from the New York Giants to a 4-year, $32 million deal. That is $8 million AAV. He had a couple of interceptions this year. He had 124 tackles. This guy is really, really solid, and he's a good tackler. He doesn't miss very many tackles, can play free safety, could play strong safety. Very versatile piece. Would be a massive upgrade at a position of need. And then again, you're going to have to go to the NFL draft to fill out the rest of it. And you have Tony Adams on the roster, who I think is someone who could compete for a starting job next year. All right, Let's go to the NFL draft. Keep in mind, I have how much remaining? $9.86 million in cap space remaining. You have to be able to sign your draft picks, number one. And then also, number two, you're going to need more just money for depth things in the offseason to fill out the rest of your roster and to sign UDFAs. So round one, pick 13 is where the Jets are sitting in the first round. And I'm going to go Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. He is a phenomenal run blocker. In my opinion, the safest offensive tackle in this draft, which you need safe. You took a big swing on Mekhi Becton, and he's been hurt 2 out of the 3 years that he's been in the league. He fits what the Jets have done offensively. It's hard to kind of draft right now because you don't know who the offensive coordinator is. But under my plan of Frank Reich, who runs a similar West Coast style of offense, I think he would fit that scheme. He played left tackle at a high level. He played right guard at a high level. This, to me, Johnson is a plug-and-play left tackle. You draft him, you put him there for 10 years, and you forget about him. The Jets definitely need that. Now, if you remember, I traded for Derek Carr, and I gave up a third-round pick in this year's draft to do that. So I am going to trade back in the second round and gain more capital. So the Jets have the 43rd pick in the draft, which is their round 2 selection. I'm going to trade that pick to Pittsburgh for pick number 49, so slide back 6 spots, and pick 119, which is a 4th round pick. With pick 49 that I acquire from the Pittsburgh Steelers, I am taking John Michael Schmitz, the interior offensive lineman, the center from Minnesota, plug and play starter at center, something else that the Jets need if they decide to let Connor McGovern go. He's a little bit of an older prospect at 24, but to me, that doesn't really matter. He just has a bunch of college experience. You plug him in there. It's different when you are taking a prospect who's a little bit older and still need them to develop. I don't really look at it that way in this instance. I think he can come in and play right away, so I don't really worry about the age as much. Offensive linemen tend to last a little bit longer anyway. He has a ton of experience in wide zone rushing concepts. I think that is just a perfect fit for what the Jets need. So 2 picks on the offensive line very early. I'm all about it. So no round 3 selections, but I do have 2 round 4 picks after the trade. Round 4, pick 109, linebacker DeMarvion Overshown. He is a big boy, 6'4", 224. He's a converted safety, so he did go to Texas originally to play the safety position. They moved him to linebacker, and where he was able to thrive was his great speed and athleticism, and guess what? He could cover. The Jets don't have linebackers who ever can cover running backs or tight ends or anybody out of the backfield or, again, tight ends. So this is, again, a really nice swing where someone who I think has a chance to potentially start from day one, but at a minimum could be your coverage linebacker at first and develop him from there. He's someone that I really like. Round 4, pick 119, which is the pick that I acquired in the trade back from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am taking Ronnie Hickman, the safety from Ohio State. A couple of Ohio State boys are coming to join Garrett Wilson. He's from New Jersey. He's tall, 6'1", 205, which the Jets were way too small at the safety position this last year. So you're bringing in a big safety. He's aggressive. He's downhill. I think he's probably better suited as a strong safety, but could probably play both. He'll compete for the job with Tony Adams, I would imagine, as a potential starter. Round 5, pick 140. I am taking a developmental quarterback in this spot in Clayton Tune, the quarterback out of Houston. He's a big boy, 6'3", 215. Now, he's a 5th rounder, so he's not going to be the most polished guy, but some things that I do like about him: he's a quick decision maker, he's a confident thrower, and his short yard accuracy is good. Where he struggles and why he's not going higher in the draft is because he's not a great deep ball thrower, and he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's a developmental pick, which you have Zach and developmental pick Clayton Tune behind Derek Carr. Carr plays all the time. He doesn't get hurt. Worst case scenario, if he was to get hurt, I think that Zach Wilson or Tune could be okay to come in and spot start you a little bit, and they wouldn't be as costly as keeping on Mike White at that point and moving on from Zach Wilson. So I'm taking a swing on a developmental quarterback. Why not in round 5? Round 6 is the final selection. Round 6, pick 171. I am taking wide receiver from Stanford, Elijah Higgins. He's a big boy, 6'3", 235. He has a basketball and track background. He's a developmental jump ball threat, someone that you could put behind Denzel Mims, Alan Lazard. I really like Higgins. Again, these 6 rounders, they're dart throws. Everything in the draft is a dart throw, but especially when you get to this point, you're kind of just picking on traits. I like the size and the athletic profile, which again, you have Garrett Wilson and you have Elijah Moore, who are very specific, speedy, finesse receivers. Big, athletic, jump ball guys is probably what the Jets need the most help with. So that's why I'm going that direction. Okay, so to finish off this video, I'll now talk about the depth chart after my signings, trades, all that stuff. So the quarterback room looks like Derek Carr as the starter, Wilson and Tune as your backup depth options. Running back room, Hall, Knight, Carter, whichever order you want to put them in behind Breece Hall is fine. I liked what Zonovan Knight showed you this year. Michael Carter really struggled, but I think he could bounce back when a little bit more healthier. Wide receiver room, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Allen Lazard, Mims, and Higgins. So Wilson on the outside, Lazard on the outside, and Moore in the slot, I think makes the most sense for this team. Tight end room, you can't really move on from Uzama or Conklin's contracts yet, so they stick. Jeremy Ruckert sticks as well. He is someone who I think deserves a bigger role in 2023, though, so I'd like to see him more involved as both a pass catcher and a blocker. Offensive line from the left to the right, Johnson starting left tackle, Tomlinson starting left guard. Can't get out of his contract, unfortunately. Schmitz is your starting center. AVT moves back to right guard as your everyday right guard. And then right tackle, you have a competition between Becton and Mitchell. I'm okay with Max Mitchell being the starter if Mekhi Becton is not healthy enough to go. I'm not willing to take that risk for Mekhi Becton to be the starting left tackle, though, and have no competition for him and not taking an offensive lineman early in the draft. As for the defense and special teams, edge room looks like Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff, Michael Clemens. That's solid. I like all three of those guys. They're young, up-and-coming pass rushers. On the interior, Quinnen Williams just got paid. Franklin Myers is able to move back inside where he, in my opinion, is more effective. Nathan Shepard for depth beyond that. Linebacker room, you have Quan Alexander, Quincy Williams, Overshown, Sherwood. I like Jamian Sherwood at the end of the year this past year. I think he filled in pretty nicely for Mosley. Cornerback room is great. Gardner, Reed, Carter, Eccles, Hall. Strong safety, you're looking at a Tony Adams / Hickman competition. Free safety would be Love. Kicker, Greg Zerloin. Punter, Morstead. And your kicker and punt returner would be Zonovan Knight. So let me know how I did. How did I do fixing the New York Jets for 2023? Comment below. Really appreciate the support on this one. It takes a ton of time to put these things together. So if you can please leave a like, subscribe, comment, share with a friend. It really means the most to me. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Matt O'Leary. I will catch you next time.